What's it all about?
Hello, I'm Brett, and welcome to episode 2 of What's It All About? Don't skip this intro. I won't be talking for long. Promise. Now, if you've already listened to the first episode, then you'll know exactly what this podcast series is all about. If you haven't, then, well, what are you waiting for? Go and have a listen and then come back to this one. Right. Now, I somehow managed to convince legendary TV director Graeme Harper to join me for a chat about his extensive career. And in this lovely conversation, Graeme and I discuss his life-changing encounter with Stanley Kubrick, the hardship of his journey to becoming a director, his joy of travel, and so much more. Graeme is truly humble and just incredibly pleasant company, so I really hope you enjoy listening to this as much as I did recording it. So, Graeme, how are you today? Everything good?
Yes, very good. Yeah, that was with it, but there we are.
The reason I ask is because I find it quite fascinating how a podcast can be entirely different depending on what day you shoot it. You could be feeling great one day or bad the other, and depending on what day you record it, you get totally different material, different vibe. So that's why I wanted to check that you're in good health.
Touch wood. Yes, I am.
But it is interesting. It's almost like live theatre, how depending on the mood of the day, the podcast could be great or terrible.
Oh, we'll try and make it great.
Yeah, we will.
Is that possible? I don't know.
Oh, no. We're in good company, so it's fine.
Ladies and gentlemen, this man met me by chance in a park, which was, I've got to remember the name of the house now. Osterley House Park. I'd just come out of the house from a visit there, National Trust, and he approached with his lady and said, "Hello, are you Graeme Harper?" And I wondered, actually, Brett, what were you thinking when you saw me in the distance coming out of that building?
Well, the funny thing is, we've just been in the bookshop that they've got there, and funny enough, they actually had, I never see them in these bookshops at National Trust properties, but they actually had some old Doctor Who books there, and I nearly bought them. And my partner afterwards said, "Do you know what, after I've met you, said, if you'd have gone in and bought those books, you'd have never met Graeme." I said, "Well, there you go." It proves I don't need all of the merchandise. But no, when I saw you from far, because I'm very good with faces, I never forget a face, and especially from a show I've loved since I was a kid. And I just saw you, and I just knew instantly. I thought, that is him, isn't it? And I thought, I'm one of these people that years ago I'd have been very embarrassed, very shy, and I was sort of a bit starstruck in that sense of thinking, well, that's someone who's in the industry and I've seen them on the TV, so it means I better not approach them. But since I think, well, what's the worst that could happen? So I thought, well, I'm going to say hello to him. And honestly, I've said it to you, and I've said it since to friends who I've told and my partner, that you were just so humble and pleasant straight away, and you didn't seem rushed for time. You didn't want to rush me on, like some people can be, actors and directors. They look at their watch and go, right, well, it's been nice, time to move on, sort of thing. You gave me the time, we had a nice chat. And initially I did sort of think maybe the response might be, well, I'm sorry, this is my day off.
I don't want to talk to you. What was nice for me was that we had a friend with us, and she was very impressed. When you went, she said, "You're so famous." And I said, "Well, hold on. If you think about it, it's one person in this whole park with 30,000 people. Well, 30, there must have been about 300 or 400 people there in the grounds. You were the only one who recognised me. And absolutely, why should you, even that?"
And then someone, I don't know if it was your wife or a friend, they said, "Oh no, he's a dentist," or something like that. And I didn't know what to say to that, so I just thought, well, I know who he is.
That would be Bernadette.
I thought, well, I've got to say hello. And Christina said to me, she said, "I did wonder why you were going up to some stranger." Because I hadn't spoken to anyone all day there, we just walked around. And she said, "I just wonder why you're going up to someone we don't know." And I said, "Well, no, And we honestly, not to sound strange, we talked about you for a good hour after. So for people who don't know who you are necessarily, could you give a brief description on your career?
So I was born in 1945. I went to an ordinary school, a state school, till I was 9 or 10. And my mother, who was an actress, but taught, by this time she was a teacher of drama, and she did amateur dramatics. She wasn't professional anymore. But she and my father always felt that they both had very, very good voices, very well educated. And I was an oik with a Cockney accent, because I was in Hertfordshire, I went to a local school, and I achieved a really nice Cockney accent, which you can probably still hear. But anyway, my sister, who was much older than me, was a very, very talented dancer, and she went to Italian Conti Stage School on a grant, and she had made a career for herself as a dancer. So my parents thought it would be good for me to go on Saturday mornings to an elocution lesson, which was, they could afford just about to do that, for an hour, to have elocution lessons at the same drama school that my sister went to full time. So I went there for a year, and during that, on Saturday mornings, and during that time, ITV was just starting. So it was 1955, 56. ITV was starting, and the first drama they were going to make was a Dickens story, The Pickwick Papers. And there's a character in that, although it was black and white, with bright red hair, called Master Bardell. So they went round all the drama schools casting for this young kid, 10-year-old. And the school principal asked my parents whether I would like to be put up for this, and they would be happy for that, because I had bright red hair. Now, it was made in black and white, but I have a feeling they made it in colour, but there was no colour television at that stage. Anyway, they asked me, and I said, oh yeah, that sounds good. So I went to meet the producer and director, amongst other people, for the part, and I got it. I now went to drama school. Best thing that could have happened for me. I have no education whatsoever with the 3 R's, but I had a fantastic period of work from the age of 10 to 16, whilst I was at the drama school learning dancing, Shakespeare, and all aspects of theatre. So I had no chance of doing anything else but really carrying on as an actor. My problem was that at the age of 16, I had huge stage fright. And in that period, the 1950s, 60s, or 1960s, there was a lot of theatre work and not lots of television. It was very new television, even the BBC, which had been going for some time. So I struggled with that, because there was stuff in television. I did get parts, and those I succeeded in. But when it came to theatre, I had terrible stage fright. I did lots and lots of different jobs, as well as theatre work and acting and television. And one day, I got a job as a driving instructor in Bournemouth, which was, if anybody knows, Bournemouth had 9 major film studios. Whilst I was working as a driving instructor, I taught a woman called Iris Rose from MGM Studios. She passed the test, so we had like 15, 20 lessons. She passed the test, and then the test day, I dropped off at MGM Studios, and she said, in order to pay me, she would have to go back into the studio where her bag was and get the money. Would I like to come in? And I said, not many. By this time, she knew of my interest in production, because I really was wondering whether I should go into production and stop being an actor, because I had such stage fright. So anyway, I walked in. Well, I walked in, so it's 1965, and I walk into a huge studio with strange space modules in the background, blah, blah, blah. And I thought, oh, this is interesting. And it was really, really spooky. We then go up the stairs to some offices above the building, and there's a man in a check shirt, pair of old jeans, and Marks and Spencer's brogues, I remember. And I'd always wanted a pair of Marks and Spencer. And there was this man who didn't look like anything, casually looking over a big drawing board. And she said, Stanley, this is Graeme, my driving instructor. And he said, oh, hi, Graeme, how's she doing? And I said, well, she just passed her test. thinking, oh, that's brilliant. And I said, what are you doing? He said, I'm mapping out my work for tomorrow on these modules around the set down below. So look, if you don't mind, get on. So I went and I went outside. I've just met Stanley Kubrick, and he looked ordinary, and it's great, and he's working over this. And I just so impressed with the models that were in the office. I took everything in. There were models, there was plenty of script, there was his big planning board. It was extraordinary, the big effect that had on me, a eureka moment. That decided me to change my career.
So that was the pivotal moment.
That meeting him, meeting her, and being allowed to talk about my ambitions and dreams, etc.
So I imagine from what you've said, it sounds like he was working on 2001.
It was a space odyssey.
A space odyssey.
When it came out, of course, it all made sense to me. Just the 5 minutes I saw of these modules, but of course I saw them and how they were used in the film when it came out. It's a marvellous film. It takes a long time for you to appreciate it. It's very long, and I think a lot of people think it's boring. But actually, a second and third time of looking at it, you start noticing all sorts of details that Kubrick put into it that you didn't take in the first time. They became the whole, but you didn't actually take it in straight away. It's a marvellous film.
Things I think people refer to 2001 in a positive light by saying it's a slow burner, but it pays off. Yeah. This podcast is called What's It All About? So my curiosity here is, what is it all about to you? What's your perspective on life? What do you feel it's all about?
It's funny you say that, because this morning there was an interview with Ridley Scott, Sir Ridley Scott, on his latest film, Napoleon. And the interviewer, to sign off, said, what's it all about for you? What do you think life's done for you? And he said, I got there. I actually got there. And I knew, and I'm sure everybody knew, but I totally knew what he meant, because I'm the same age as he, really, or nearly the same age. And when I look back on what I've done, where I've been, etc., I never got to make movies, but I did get to make some really nice programs to it that I really enjoyed making, and hope everybody else did. And I made it for the public. I made it the way I thought I would love to see it, so hopefully they enjoyed the same thing.
Well, I can safely say, as I've said to you outside this podcast, you really did, because Doctor Who, Inside Number 9, The New Statesman, all the other things that I've grown up watching and enjoyed, whenever I saw your name, even at a young age, whenever I saw your name coming up on the directing credit, I thought, I knew there was something special about that episode or something.
Because it's really nice. Thank you.
Yeah, honestly, it had something. And you inject so much energy into what you do, and that comes across on the screen just from an objective viewpoint. So yeah, The Case of Androzani, Revelation of the Daleks, the new Doctor Who's you did with David Tennant, and all the other shows that I haven't named, there's just something about them that I think a director really does make or break a programme. It's in the title, isn't it? They direct.
Yeah.
And to me, I sort of extend your point there. I think, you have made it, because you made a bloody good impression.
I'm thrilled. That's really nice.
No, pleasure. Your day-to-day life, what do you think that's all about? About, relationships between friends, family, the public. What do you think it's all about getting up in the morning?
I think every morning I tend to think, not straight away, the first thing I think of is, I'm really hungry, I want some breakfast. But when I'm having breakfast, I think, what am I going to do today? I've got this to do, that to do. Sometimes there's so much clutter you just got to get through that you don't really, the day goes suddenly and you haven't seemed to have achieved very much. You probably have, but you haven't achieved something special for you. It's been mundane, but not all the time. I'm fairly optimistic, so I might seem sort of grumpy to some people. I'm not grumpy, but I mean, I know I'm not always smiling all day, happy. But
people might think you're a bit strange if you did that, Graeme. I think anyone who walked around smiling all day, it would look a bit bizarre.
When things go wrong, and you've got to compromise, and life's a compromise, but out of the compromise, there's always a possibility of something great to be got out of it. So if you have to compromise, in directing, I always manage, I don't know why, but I manage to find a bonus out of the new way of having to do something. Because you end up going, do you know what? If we hadn't had to have done it this way, which I didn't really want to do, we'd never have got that fantastic performance from that person because the whole thing was biased. Whatever it is, it is enjoy and appreciate the bonus you get out of the fact that you've had to do something in a different way. It doesn't matter what it is. So I'm talking about directing, but it can be about the things you plan to do in the day. Something goes wrong, you can't do that. Look at the bonus you get out of what you do achieve from the day. And I think that's what I get out of life. I try and see and get the best out of a bad situation. And it often works. Sometimes it doesn't, but you try and you get a satisfaction at the fact you tried at least.
I mean, I agree with you because I think it could be applied to every aspect of life. It could be a relationship that doesn't work out. Yes, it may be painful, but you have to come away from it and think, well, okay, where's my life going to go now, though? And try and think of the positive out of that. Same with jobs, same with... I really agree with you there. It's about the bonus ball and the lottery.
Yeah. There are times in our lives, I don't know if you have to say, but there are times when you have kind of solitude moments where you're thinking about your life and deeply about something, and then you might go on to thinking about infinity and eternity and what's beyond the beyond in space. What is beyond all that we see? Because there's more, and there's more we can't even see, and there's more beyond that. What is eternity? If you think about hard enough and you dig deep into your brain, you almost get out, you almost understand what it is, but of course you can't. It's impossible. It's beyond the beyond.
And I think sometimes when you do think too much, it depends on the perspective, but sometimes when you do think quite deeply about those sort of aspects, there is multiple universes, there's things we don't understand, things we don't know, things we can't see. Sometimes it's quite refreshing because then you can put it back to any problems you're experiencing in the day to day and you think, my God, that's minor. Anything I was worrying and stressing about today, it doesn't really matter in the grand scheme of things.
No, it's minuscule. I totally agree.
So I always find that quite fascinating as well. I think that's a great thing about life is that you may think of something in your head, even today, even the planning of us sitting down having this conversation, you have a view of it in your mind. And it's never that way. It always ends up being totally different or different in many ways, So.
And should we stop it now then?
Yeah, might as well. So goodbye, but no.
Well, I had to make a living, so I did all that. I cleaned lavatories, I cleaned houses, I worked as a draftsman in a computer company, I worked as a person who put logistic frames together, and I'm colourblind, so that didn't last long because when you're doing computer logic forms, panels, they're full of solenoids and got different coloured electronic components. I had no idea what I was doing with them.
From what I heard on the documentary years ago, one thing I really thought was fantastic about yourself was that you worked damn hard to get where you are. You did pretty much every job in television to work your way up, from what I heard. Correct me if I'm wrong. And I just think that was really commendable that, you were quite happy to do physical, hard work to get there, rather than it being handed to you like some people in the industry. What you just said then, I hope you don't mind me asking, have you always been colourblind?
Yes.
To what extent is it?
Terrible. I went to see an optician. How am I directed? Because I shouldn't be colourblind. Don't tell anybody, it's too late. So I went to see an optician in Hampstead. She was Viennese, and I said to her, I'm colourblind, but I want to find out how colourblind.
Yeah.
She thought, we can do something for you. There are some tests. So she got 3 books out with lots of dots on each page. And the idea is that when you look at each of these pages, if you're colourblind, you see one image, but if you're not, you see something else.
Right.
And there were about 20 pages in each book. And I went through the whole lot. She said to me at the end, get out of my shop. And I said, why are you behaving like that? She said, get out of my shop. There's no one has the problem that you have.
Oh, really?
And I said, what? She said, you have a problem with every colour.
It's just interesting for someone who doesn't have that to just hear how it affects someone else, really. So,
It's terrible.
Yeah.
When it affects your job.
Mm.
But I've never let it affect my
Yeah.
job as a director.
That's the key.
I don't know how I've managed that, but it's never been a major problem.
Are there any things in life that really annoy you? Are there any things you can't stand? Things that you think that could easily be resolved and still happens? It could be something really big, or it could be something as small as slow people walking in front of you in the street.
There are two things that drive me nuts. One is 20 mile an hour zone. Everywhere is 20 miles an hour. Major roads, even major roads where there's nothing, you're out in the open fields. Some of them are 20 miles an hour. I find the thinking behind this really stupid. I have several gripes. I think our government should get its finger out and sort ourselves out. I think the way they sometimes pat themselves on the back, we've got, the economy is now coming together. I still think we're poorly served by this government.
Yeah.
And I'm not so sure we're going to get a better one.
As I always do, converting a negative into a positive, let's talk about things that you love in life. So the simple pleasures. So not necessarily the majorly big things, but the simple pleasures in life that bring you comfort and happiness.
Well, there are three simple pleasures I have. One is I love travelling. Two is I love Paris and Sydney. I've been to many places, but those two places I absolutely love being in. And the third one, which is my secret desire, my special, whatever you want to call it, is a magnificent millefeuille from Patisserie Valerie, which is a beautiful gâteau that I adore. That's my secret pleasure.
Nice. I'm very sorry I couldn't provide that for you today.
So am I. I'm in trouble because I love daytime television. And on daytime television, you have three programmes that run into each other. One is called Escape to the Country, which is just to die for. So interesting. And fabulous properties, and not so fabulous as well. But, that then runs into The Bidding Room. And then there's this fabulous programme which is called The Repair Shop. Now, those three programmes currently run into each other, so that's 3 hours of my day completely gone. But it's just fascinating.
Different type of pleasure here.
Sex.
Well, that was one of them. I'll just erase that from
You should leave that.
We could tie in. What, if any, comedies or sitcoms do you find most humorous? Do you enjoy sitcoms, comedy?
I'm going to be cruel and say I don't find any current comedy, to my knowledge. I'm sure there's stuff that I haven't seen. I don't think of any comedies currently that I think are amusing to me.
Well, I agree.
A comedy that I thought was hilarious in my life, made me laugh, was absolutely brilliantly acted and performed by the two main characters as well as everybody else. And the ideas behind the comedy was Some Mothers Do Have Them, which is absolutely gobsmackingly brilliant. Or was.
Yeah.
There's nothing like it.
No, I mean, I think people have tried to. I remember in 2001, I think it was, Lee Evans tried to make pretty much, I didn't know at the time, it was clearly a remake of Some Others Do Have Them. His character was almost like Norman Wisdom and Michael Crawford combined.
Yeah. Rik, obviously the young ones, that was complete berserk, slapstick, but berserk.
And
Bottoms. Bottoms.
Similar, yeah.
But his ability, he was a great actor. I don't think he even knew how great he was. He was a great actor.
And seeing as we're talking about Rik, I wondered if you could tell us about your personal experience with working with him on The New Statesman.
It was that was funny. That was a funny script, funny comedy, and these two people are funny. But they're also, both of them, serious actors in their own right. I really enjoyed it. And one of there was a one day in series 1, second or third episode, I said in a coffee break we had, I said, it's funny, Rik, but we come every time we get to the end of scene 3. You mug, you pull a funny face, and I said, I don't know why, because you come out of character. It becomes you, Rik Mayall, pulling a face, not the character. And he said, the reason I do that, Graeme, and he said, I'm glad you noticed, because the reason I do that is because I'm going to get a laugh with that. And I said, but you've got a tagline at the end. He said, yeah, but it's not funny. So I said, well, let's get a funny line. If you don't, I mean, I think it's funny, but if you're not happy with that, let's get a funny line. And he said, are you sure? I said, yeah, because what happens is, it's like you break the fourth wall. You come out of character to pull this mugging face, which everybody laughs at because it's Rik Mayall having a laugh, out of character, and then we get back into it for the next thing. And actually, I want you to keep to being Alan Bastard all the time. He said, well, you get me a funny line then. So I would then go to the producer and say, we don't think this is funny, this last line of this scene. And I don't want Rik to mug, because it's Rik mugging, not what's name. So can the boys have a look at it and see if they can come up with a funnier line? And they always did. They probably were very fed up, the two writers, because they probably thought what they'd written was hilarious, and Rik wasn't trying hard enough, maybe.
Lawrence Marks and Maurice Grant.
Maurice Grant. Yeah. Who are fabulous comedy writers. But that's... and guess what? They got what they wanted. He got what he wanted. He got a funny line, and he stopped mugging.
I think with Rik, people tend to always have the image of the young ones, the bottom characters, and they just stereotype them as that, whereas they don't realise the craft behind what he was doing.
Oh, he was seriously good.
Yeah. We first met at Osterley House, a National Trust location. More about leisure here, but do you often visit National Trust properties and enjoy them? Do you also enjoy the outdoors?
Yes. I had the opportunity throughout my career of going on recce's, looking for locations, and also, well, as a junior assistant floor manager, I helped the first look for locations. And then when I became a first, I did too. And often I would go to a National Trust or British Heritage property. But I got an opportunity for free to go and see some of the great homes, and also some are privately owned by the lords and ladies that are still lords and ladies. So you had a lovely opportunity of seeing how the other half lives, and sometimes they invite you to supper. And then I thought one day I should become a member because I could claim for it against tax as part of my job. And I get the opportunity to now go, after a few visits, you've paid for the admission, really. Yeah. And then after that, it's really as many times as you can get in. You've got free parking, and you can go and see wonderful properties. They're going to cost you nothing, because normally they cost you to go in.
Yeah. Was our chance meeting at Osterley House just a leisurely stroll, or were you plotting some locations then?
No, but I do that. When I go to these places, you often think, oh, it'd be great to do something. And you look at if I ever do that, so this is where we want to come to do it, a spooky thing or something that's just exotic.
Going back to directing again, how does your approach change between jobs? For example, we mentioned some of these before, but how would you begin to tackle directing Inside Number 9 compared to Doctor Who, for example? I'm saying those because they're quite different products.
I probably don't. I suspect there's not very much difference. The approach really is, the only difference in the approach is that where there's action, I have to do big storyboarding. I'm working around the fact that I think I do exactly the same thing. There's no special approach. But one is great drama and the other's great comedy. The problem with David Tennant is that he's also comic as Doctor Who. So in other words, you have to know how to deal and what size to be in for his comic moments. Do you want to be too close, or should we be widest? Because he had fantastic body language is the most important part in comedy. And when you've got a double act, you have to do more two-shot work where they're both of them in the same frame because of the body language they have between them, which is also comic. So I would say that's the difference, that in a comedy series like Inside Number 9, you do a lot more two shots of the two main comedy characters than you might do in a Doctor Who. I love doing Doctor Who because it gave me an opportunity to do action and adventure. Towards the end of my career, I'm not finished yet, but I majorly stopped working every day.
With the newer series compared to the 80s episodes you directed, did it feel bigger to direct? Well, I'm sure it must have,
Yeah. The old one felt big, epic desires from the script. No money and no finance. It's the same, no money and no real time to do it justice. With the limited resources we had and the look of it, we still we managed, despite the efforts against it, we managed to make a good programme out of the Caves of Amazani and Revelation of the Daleks.
And to be honest, those two in particular in the 80s, they are dark stories, really, those two directed. Did you plan to bring the darkness out in your directing, or did you just follow it as the script?
No, I was adventurous. I was keen to show I could do something. It was a calling card. It did me such a lot of good. That programme really got me a lot of work.
Do you have any personal favourite directors? Directors that when you watch a film you go, oh, it's them, I can tell, I love it. Is there any directors that come to mind that you just love?
Yeah, so I like Martin Campbell. I've worked with him as a first, learnt so much from him. Mad, completely bonkers as a director in terms of his dreams and wishes, but he carries them out and they're brilliant. His ideas are stunning. John Davis, who I worked with as an assistant director on War and Peace in the 1971-72 period, being 20 episode epic, 2 years of our lives, all of us working with John to make that fabulous production. Moira Armstrong, fabulous director. I learned so much working with her on Testament of Youth, brilliant. Female director, the 1980s, earlier than that, but 1980s, 1990s, fabulous, wonderful. Everything she made was brilliant to watch. I didn't like Tarantino at the beginning of his career. I do now. I love watching his films.
Going back to when you watch your projects on broadcast, what are your thoughts whilst you're watching them back?
I wish I could do that again because I could make it so much better.
Oh, yeah.
The way we cut something, I always remember it one way, and then you see it and go, oh God, why did we cut there? We could have cut just a bit later, where I would have now done it. But there's nothing you can do about that. And in the end, it's not about you, it's about the story.
Do you have, could be from literature or something you've even heard or something you've watched, a favourite quote?
Yes, but you won't like it. And you'll find it obscure because it doesn't matter, it's not important. Hey Spence, it's your birthday. I'm going to bake you a birthday cake.
What is it?
It comes from Some Like It Hot.
Oh.
And it's all the gangsters sitting at a convention. And a cake is brought in for spats.
It was one of my nan's favourite movies.
Oh.
I'd never really looked at it all the way through, but I sort of knew where you were going.
She was not wrong. It's in black and white, which is a shame. It's a marvellous piece of comedy.
So what is it about that quote that you really like?
I don't know why. It's just I don't know, because I had lots of friends who quoted it to me because it's such an icon. When you're a kid, you pick up the famous sayings by Ducks and Mouse and God knows who else. And this pug-nosed face, fat gangster saying, "Hey, Spence, it's your birthday. And we made you a birthday cake."
It's just the weird comparison.
It's just the weird comparison, the way he spoke.
What do you make of the world we live in today? Are you happy with it or not so much?
No. I think we're led by incompetence in this country at the moment.
Yeah.
There's no gravitas. The fact they brought David Cameron in,
yeah,
I know that gives gravitas because he's been experienced and he's been in the top position. So I wonder, what did he do for the country when he was in charge that merits him being in such a key role now? We have very weak politicians leading us, and America's the same. And the difference at the moment is you've either got Biden where you've got Trump
Yeah.
coming in. Surely we can do better than this, because these are old people.
I grew up in the 90s and the noughties. So I grew up, not terribly long ago, but to me, even then, the world seemed tough. It seemed robust, it seemed tough, it seemed knitted together, and it seemed quite firm, and that we knew what we were doing and everyone knew where they were. And not just politically, but I think morally and ethically, everything about the world now in 2023, at the time we're recording this, it seems weak. The world and people seem weak and scared and afraid to say or do anything. And to me, I feel it's so difficult being in this life at the moment, because you don't know what you have to say. You have to preempt what you're going to say to anyone. That be someone in the supermarket, or as we're talking now, or to even friends and family sometimes, because you don't want to upset their values and views. Whereas even 10, 20, 30 years ago, everyone had values and views and no one wanted to upset them. But there's a fragility about the world now, which I think is sad.
We all seem to be accepting dictators. There seems to be a large amount of dictators in the world. Well, how has that come about?
But if you could, what's the main thing you would change about the world if you had that ability?
Just to live in peace and harmony, and to enjoy each other's company, what we make for each other, what we make that's useful for the world out there, what they make that we would love to have, and have fantastic trading. And why do we have to have people who, I want control, I want power, so I'm going to grab it, and I'll promise everybody. It's so cynical.
If you had the attention of the world for 5 minutes, what would you say to everyone?
Put your fingers up, take your head out of the sand, look at who's running us and stop them. Let's get some more honesty and truthfulness into the world, and let's try and be really seriously greener and better, and make the world a better place for us all to live in.
So that's all for now, folks. I hope you've managed to take something away from Graeme's inspiring stories. And if you've enjoyed what you've heard so far, be sure to check out the next episode. After all, it could present some different perspectives on life than the ones we've just heard from Graeme Harper. So until next time, I'll leave you to ponder on what it's all about. And I look forward to welcoming you into another conversation soon.